Okay, seriously, I figured it out like 5 minutes ago. He's going to prison. This entire election is a setup. It's a honey trap. It's a sting operation. I'm being serious. Serious. The Supreme Court ruled that ex-presidents have immunity for crimes they commit in the Oval Office, right? But they said nothing about immunity for crimes that ex-presidents commit when they're ex-presidents. Trump is going to lose this thing, and he's already trying to steal the election. He's going to start committing crimes again, and he has no immunity this time around. This whole thing is a honeypot, a sting operation. I'm so happy. I'll talk about it later. This is just great news. Donald Trump is going to go to prison. Lot to get to. On today's show, J.D. Vance admits he's a liar and doesn't care how many lives are destroyed because of those lies. The editor of the National Review's catastrophic Freudian slip. The editor of the National Review has a catastrophic Freudian slip. He calls migrants the N-word while talking to Megyn Kelly. Not the first time she's heard that word. Or anyway, Don Jr.'s tirade against black people caught on tape, where Donald's oldest son, Don Jr., spouted discredited race science, not witnessed since the 1930s in Berlin or this month's end of summer Trump family Labor Day gathering at Mar-a-Lago. And we're seeing significant signs of a post-debate bounce for Kamala Harris. A brand new Morning Consult poll shows Harris leading Trump by 6 points. A new Economist YouGov poll shows her leading Trump by 5. This means Donald Trump is about to get even more dangerous, and this time he doesn't enjoy immunity. This is the mop-up for September 18th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. And if you want to support me, please forward this episode to your friends. The only reason I have an audience is because of my audience. I am nothing without you. Seriously, I'm not famous. I'm not part of any podcasting conglomerate. I don't take money from any 501c3s. This show is listener supported, so thank you for sharing these episodes. The election is November 5th, and there is absolutely no indication Donald Trump will accept the results. In fact, there is every indication he won't. He refuses to say, I'll concede if I lose. And a little later on in the show, you'll see why he's going to have to eventually concede, maybe in prison. He cannot win this thing. Now, it might be close in the battleground states, but his pathway to 270, as you'll see later, is filled with nothing but dead ends. A repeat of January 6th or something similar should be expected. He will not be able to handle this. And what you have to fear is there are judges, politicians, senators, members of the House, governors, and millions of voters who prefer authoritarianism to democracy. You know, the pollsters always ask, who is the bigger threat to democracy, Harris or Trump? The question they're too afraid to ask is, do you believe in democracy? Because the number of Americans who don't is staggering. By the way, I cannot tell you the number of hyper-educated, self-proclaimed liberal Democrats who have confided that not everyone should be allowed to vote because they're just not smart enough. Don't think for 1 second there isn't an authoritarian strain in all of us. The World Justice Project is a nonpartisan organization that keeps track of the state of democracy around the world. According to their new study of American voters, 46% of Republicans say they will not accept the results of the November 5th election if or when Trump loses. 14% of Republicans say that if Trump loses, they are prepared to, quote unquote, take action. And I think we know what that means. Elizabeth Anderson is executive director of the World Justice Project, and she told USA Today on Tuesday that these results are startling and suggested this is something you don't expect to see in an advanced democracy like America. Bloomberg reports this morning that PRRI, a nonpartisan, nonprofit polling organization, is out this morning with equally disturbing information. 32% of Trump supporters say true patriots resort to violence in order to save their country. 2/3 of Republicans said yes when asked if they believe the final battle between good and evil is upon us and Christians should stand firm with the full armor of God. Let me repeat that. 2/3 of Republicans said yes when asked if they believe the final battle between good and evil is upon us and Christians should stand firm with the full armor of God. The full armor of God. Yes. 43% of Trump supporters said yes when asked if God wants Christians to take control of the 7 mountains of society. 43% of Trump supporters said yes when asked if God wants Christians to take control of the 7 mountains of society. This is the apostolic teachings that Speaker Mike Johnson subscribes to, as manifested by this appeal to heaven flag carried into the Capitol on January 6th, and which stands outside Speaker Mike Johnson's office door. The appeal to heaven flag. It's the same flag Samuel Alito's idiot wife raised outside their vacation home in Jersey. They believe in wearing the full armor of God and taking control of the 7 mountains of society. The appeal to heaven flag. This is what many of the January 6ers believe in. 60% of Republicans say they believe in the Great Replacement theory, a theory that says brown and black people are being brought into this country to replace white Americans. This is why you saw the Confederate flag waved so proudly on January 6th inside the Capitol. Nearly 70% of Republicans said immigrants are invading our country and, quote, poisoning the blood of America. Nearly 70% of Republicans believe this country has gotten too soft, too feminine. 45% of Republicans say that in a truly Christian family, the husband is the head of the household and his wife submits to his leadership. 45% of Republicans believe that. So, this is what November 5th is going to be about for way, way too many voters. Trump, J.D. Vance, and Republicans read these polls. When they attack Haitians, the LGBTQ community, women, migrants, no-fault divorce, they see something in America that too many of us refuse to acknowledge. Extremist Christian white nationalist authoritarianism remains an untapped market. Ignore these people at your own peril. And while there are not enough of these worthless morons to win elections, there are enough to try to steal elections, to not accept the results, of an election and resort to violence. USA Today reported this week that 7 in 10 election officials around this country now say threats against them have increased dramatically since 2020. The Brennan Center back in May issued a report showing that 36% of local election workers say they have been harassed, threatened, and physically abused while trying to do their jobs. ABC News reports this morning that suspicious packages were sent to election officials in 6 or more states 2 days ago. Secretaries of State and state election offices in Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, Tennessee, Wyoming, and Oklahoma all contacted the FBI this week to report that they received packages with what seemed to be a hazardous white powder. ABC News says this is now the second time this year that secretaries of state around the country contacted the FBI to say they've received threatening packages. ABC News also reports this morning that police have reopened their investigation into that incident at Arlington Cemetery earlier this month when Trump campaign officials allegedly assaulted a female cemetery worker, shoving her out of the way and threatening her after she tried to stop them from turning a burial site reserved for American soldiers killed in Afghanistan into a photo op. The New York Times reported that the woman contacted police and wanted to file a complaint because she was physically assaulted, but then she changed her mind for fear of retaliation by Trump supporters. Where would she get an idea like that? The matter was reportedly closed, according to everyone involved, but now ABC News reports this morning that the Joint Base Meyer-Henderson Hall Police Department, they take care of Arlington Cemetery, these police officers have reopened the case and want to speak to Donald Trump's campaign officials who were involved in the incident. I'll have more on all this later on today's show. This is the mop-up for September 18th. 2024. Please check out some of the merchandise over at shopdavidfeldman.com. We have some wonderful gifts that you can buy for yourself. And not supposed to show that one. That was Laura Loomer's tweet from the show before. You can, how do we do this? There you go. shopdavidfeldman.com. Pick up the Still a Democrat t-shirt. It also comes as a coffee mug. And here's something new. What do you buy a MAGA moron? Well, you can buy one of 3 new caps we're selling. A MAGA cap, a MAGA for Kamala, and a MAGA moron cap. I recommend the MAGA cap for your MAGA friend because it says on the back, you see that low IQ individual. You know they're not going to see that. So if you have any friends or relatives who are MAGA morons, just buy them the MAGA hat with the low IQ individual on the back. Or MAGA for Kamala. That's something I could see my son wearing. And of course, MAGA moron, which I think a lot of MAGA morons would wear. I do. I'm going to be talking about my worst case scenario map today on the show. It's also now on a coffee mug. It's a great souvenir for the 2024 presidential election. It shows you why it's impossible for Kamala Harris not to get to 270. This is new. It's Donald Trump as he sees himself, a king. I call him Genghis Khan, C-O-N. And this is Donald Trump as a predator. And I like this next one. They do a really great job. This is Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. And it's on both sides. And I've had this for more than 2 months. It's the prototype. I use it every day, and they use a special ink. It's incredible how beautiful it is, and microwave safe, and of course dishwasher safe. Actually, I'm told it's microwave safe. I don't have a microwave oven, so I have to take their word for it. But I do put it in the dishwasher. And what else you got a MAGA moron? A Trump 2028 coffee mug. And help a brother out by purchasing some David Ferdman Show swag. My nephew doesn't know how to spell Feldman, so I'm stuck with a David Ferdman Show. Bunch of David Ferdman Show coffee mugs, David Ferdman Show t-shirts and hoodies, and the Still a Democrat coffee mug made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug, the official Trump fart filtration mask. And if you want to break my heart, pick up, this is my biggest seller. It's a chef's apron with the words, "I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." Well, let's meet some of the idiots who purchase garbage over at davidfeldmanshow.com. These are actual listeners who keep the lights on here by buying crap that they don't need over at shopdavidfeldman.com. This is Reggie from Staten Island, and he's purchased 16 hope you're in the mood for diarrhea aprons, and this is what Reggie has to say.
Under Kamala Harris and the communist left, our country is under invasion. We are under invasion just like it was an army. Except in many ways it's more difficult because they don't wear a uniform. You don't know who the hell to go after.
That's Reggie from Staten Island. 16, I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea aprons. This is Simon, also from Staten Island. He bought 40, hope you're in the mood for diarrhea aprons. Let's hear what he has to say.
Almost every single job was taken by a migrant worker, and black workers are losing their jobs to these people that are pouring into our country, and Hispanics are losing their jobs. And next will be unions.
Okay, that would be Simon from Staten Island. And next up, and finally, this is Emily Nussbaum, also of Staten Island. She bought 500 hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's aprons. Let's see what she has to say.
She's already talking about bringing back the draft. She wants to bring back the draft and draft your child and put him in a war that should never have happened.
Okay. All right. I'm taking animation classes, and so I'm learning animation. And I don't know why, but I've been showing these on the show, and some of my listeners are complaining, and I can't tell if they say, is this real? So I'm going to assume they just listen to the show and aren't looking at the end. I'm not that good an artist, so I'm going to assume but people are getting pissed off. I mean, I know it's probably not something I should inject into the show, but it's for my sanity. But there are some people who really hate these voices parroting Donald Trump. I don't know. For my sanity, I'm learning animation. Some of my older listeners might remember from 10 years ago when I was, this is how I ruined 2 marriages. Okay. Let's get to something more serious, okay? I apologize for that. This is very serious. Kentucky State Senator, Republican Johnny Turner, is listed in critical but stable condition this morning inside the University of Tennessee Medical Center in Knoxville, Tennessee, after he drove his riding mower into the deep end of an empty swimming pool over the weekend. We pray for a speedy recovery for Kentucky State Senator, Republican Johnny Turner, who drove his riding mower into the deep end of an empty swimming pool over the weekend. Sean Combs. I'm going to talk about this for a second because we can't, I don't know if, I hope this isn't true, but the human brain cannot fathom certain behavior. We deny that anybody is capable of what Jeffrey Epstein did or what Sean Combs is being accused of. Because I read this today and I went, it can't be true. This cannot possibly be true. Sean Combs, the rap artist and producer whose tentacles for more than 3 decades reached into fashion, television, and name brand liquor, arrested on Tuesday, being held without bail after federal agents charged him with running a criminal enterprise that resorted to kidnapping, arson, sex trafficking, forced labor, bribery, and obstruction of justice. I hope this isn't true. During a press conference on Tuesday, Damian Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, charged Combs with physically and emotionally abusing women, forcing them to engage in sexual acts against their will while plying them with narcotics. Williams said Combs videotaped his victims in compromising sex acts and then threatened to release those videos to the public if his victims contacted authorities. Combs is also charged with punching and kicking women and then obstructing justice by paying off witnesses to keep their mouths shut. A search of his Los Angeles home last spring uncovered 1,000 bottles of baby oil, which prosecutors said he used as a lubricant. A search of his Miami home found 9 AR-15 style assault weapons. That's what, if you live in Miami, you hoard AR-15s. For your home in Los Angeles, you hoard baby oil. He was arrested while staying at the Park Hyatt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, just miles away from Harlem, where he was born. Some say if convicted, he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. Harland and Wolff, the shipping company that built the Titanic, has filed for bankruptcy. This is shocking. I can't believe Harland and Wolff went belly up. They told me this company was unsinkable. As for paying off creditors, it will be women and children first. Donald Trump, in his new coffee table book entitled Save America, writes that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is the son of Fidel Castro. Trump, in his new book, repeated rumors that Trudeau is the result of his mother's alleged affair with the Cuban dictator. In the book, Trump writes, quote, "He swears that he isn't Castro's son, but how the hell would he know? Castro had good hair. The father didn't. Justin has good hair and has become a communist just like Castro," unquote. Take note, those of you in the developing world, this is how world leaders build alliances. Let's get this man back in the Oval Office ASAP. Justin Trudeau is in fact the son of former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Margaret Trudeau. Margaret Trudeau has spent most of her life fighting to bring potable water to and improving sanitary conditions for struggling communities around the world. She has also been an outspoken champion for those suffering from mental health disorders, like this guy, Donald Trump Jr., seen here on a hunting trip in Africa with his now deceased mother, Ivana. Is that Ivana? Is that Don Jr.? Maybe. I can't tell. Don Jr. launched into a racist tirade against Haitians who, if you haven't noticed, are now the political punching bag after J.D. Vance and then Donald Trump in last week's debate accused Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, of stealing pet cats and dogs and then eating them. During an interview with Turning Point's leader Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump Jr. said, quote, "You look at Haiti, you look at the demographic makeup, you look at the average IQ, and if you import the third world into America, you're going to turn America into the third world. That's just basic. It's not racist, it's just fact," unquote. Donald Trump Jr. saying that Haitians have lower IQs than we do. You know, Donald Trump Jr. complaining about low IQs is like Donald Trump Jr. complaining about people who rely on Adderall in the morning, 3 rails of meth in the afternoon, 10 rails of Ritalin before leaving the house, and 6 Secanols and a quarter of JD to sleep it off at night. That would be the same thing as, I'm not saying Don Jr. survives on that diet. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me. During an interview on CNN last week, J.D. Vance blamed the spread of HIV and tuberculosis on the influx of Haitian immigrants. But as The Advocate reports, the Ohio senator offered no evidence to support that claim. Because there is no evidence, which makes J.D. Vance a race-baiting, lying racist. Why would you expect any evidence to support any of J.D. Vance's claims? Vance now openly admits he's a liar and that politicians and leaders, this is what he said, must spread lies in order to draw attention to larger problems. In other words, I have to lie about the Haitians to draw attention to the problem of Haitians. 1933, Berlin. During an appearance on CNN Sunday, J.D. Vance was asked to back up his claims that Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, are eating pets. When told by Dana Bash that the governor of Ohio, Republican, and the city manager of Springfield, Ohio, and the local police in Springfield, Ohio, all say there is not a shred of evidence of Haitian immigrants eating pets in Springfield or any other city in Ohio, Vance buckled and said the following. This is what he said. This could be one of the worst things any American politician ever said. He said, quote, "The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do. If I have to create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do." And what is the suffering of the American people? Black immigrants. Harmless black immigrants. That is the suffering. When Dana Bash asked, "So you made up the story about Haitians eating pets?" J.D. Vance, racist, said, quote, "I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000 illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Her policies did that. But yes, we created the actual focus that allowed the American media to talk about the story and the suffering caused by Kamala Harris's policies," unquote. What a horribly dangerous fascist and racist. He sees Haitian migrants living in Ohio as a problem. He doesn't want them there. Why? Because they're black. And to draw attention to the problem of black people living in Springfield, Ohio, J.D. Vance says it's okay to lie about them, to spread falsehoods that Haitians are eating pets. Spread the lie about Haitians eating pets in order to draw attention to the problem of black people legally, not illegally, legally moving into Springfield, Ohio. One of the worst things I've ever seen in politics. He is as disgraceful as Donald Trump. This is how you get people hurt. It's also how you get people to hate and then harm minorities. You lie. 1933 Berlin, you lie. You accuse the migrants of crimes they're not committing, like smuggling fentanyl into America, which they are not. Migrants are not smuggling fentanyl. That is a lie. Or you accuse the LGBTQ community of grooming children. You spread lies about Haitians. You spread lies about migrants and members of the LGBTQ plus community so that Americans first fear, then hate, and then harm them. It doesn't get any worse than this. It really doesn't. This is exactly what Hitler did. Right now, we're looking at a prime example of stochastic terrorism. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are tossing gasoline-soaked rags into the political arena and waiting for someone to set it on fire. And Vance knows exactly what he's doing. He knows he's spreading racist lies to further his political agenda. He said as much on CNN Sunday. Well, CNN also reports this morning that while Vance was a law student at Yale back in 2012, right after Obama defeated Mitt Romney and Republicans were performing their famous autopsy on what's wrong with our party, J.D. Vance wrote an article over at the Center for World Conflict and Peace accusing the Republican Party of being openly hostile to non-whites and alienating blacks, Latinos, and young people. He wrote that. He knows it's wrong. He also knows politically, or at least he knew in 2012, that this is a losing message. Do you remember there was an autopsy after the Republicans lost in 2012, and they decided we have to court blacks, Hispanics, and so in 2016, they nominated Donald Trump. So J.D. Vance's article, this is why he is such a monster. J.D. Vance is a monstrosity. The article he wrote was entitled A Blueprint for the GOP. In the article from 2012, this is what J.D. Vance wrote while he was going to Yale Law School. Quote, a significant part of Republican immigration policy centers on the possibility of deporting 12 million people, or as Mitt Romney said, self-deporting them. He continues, think about it. We conservatives rightly mistrust the government to efficiently administer business loans and regulate our food supply, yet we allegedly believe that it can deport millions of unregistered aliens. The notion fails to pass the laugh test. The same can be said for too much of the Republican Party's platform, unquote. Okay. According to new reporting by CNN, 4 years ago, 4 years after he wrote that in 2012, 4 years later in 2016, he contacted the professor who published that article. And J.D. Vance asked the professor to scrub his article from the internet. Professor Brad Nelson, who ran the website and taught J.D. Vance as an undergraduate at Ohio State, told CNN yesterday that J.D. Vance asked him to remove the article back in 2016, saying that scrubbing it would make it easier for me to land a job in Republican politics. And so the professor obliged and got rid of that article. But now the professor is so appalled by Vance's hateful, racist, bigoted rhetoric, he felt compelled to step forward. Vance knows he's lying. He admitted on Sunday, I'm a liar. He doesn't care. He couldn't care less that these lies have real-world consequences. He is a monster. The Republican governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, announced that he's been forced now to send 36 state troopers to Springfield, Ohio, to protect the schools there, to sweep classrooms each day for explosives after more than 33 bomb threats were phoned in since J.D. Vance and Donald Trump began spreading these lies about Haitians. 2 hospitals and all the government buildings in Springfield, Ohio, were evacuated last week and had to go into lockdown because of threats stemming from these lies about Haitian immigrants. Because of Ohio Senator J.D. Vance's lies, Ohio police will be working overtime all month, standing guard at Springfield, Ohio schools, and surveillance cameras are now being planted throughout Springfield. Thank you, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. The city of Springfield, Ohio, announced because of all the threats, they have had to cancel Culture Fest, an annual celebration of Springfield's rich diversity. Why are they having to cancel it? Because of safety concerns. The Guardian, the Associated Press, and the New York Times all report that there are anywhere between 12,000 to 20,000 Haitian immigrants living and working in Springfield, Ohio. More importantly, they are in this country legally, and they were recruited to come to Springfield, Ohio, to work and live, to work in factories, to work in warehouses. They were recruited by local businesses dealing with a labor shortage. Okay? I've talked about all the towns that don't have enough people, desperately need more people, and the migrants are a godsend. Some of these towns have asked Joe Biden and Texas Governor Greg Abbott, send them here. Send them here. We'll take them. Members of the Springfield, Ohio City Council and business leaders in Springfield, Ohio all say the influx of Haitians has created a building boom in Springfield, Ohio, to house them. It's good for the economy, and because they're working and they have families, they're boosting the GDP of Springfield, Ohio. It's called the multiplier effect. The more people in your city working, the more people in your city living in your city, it means more people are buying milk, groceries, going to a movie, going to a bar. The velocity of money passed back and forth among members of the Springfield, Ohio community increases exponentially with these Haitian immigrants. It boosts sales, it boosts income and GDP. So what's the problem? They're black. That's the issue. They're black. J.D. Vance is the absolute worst. During a campaign stop in Michigan on Tuesday, J.D. Vance accused Kamala Harris of stoking the flames of political violence. He blamed her heated rhetoric for both assassination attempts on Donald Trump's life. In the past week, J.D. Vance warned that Democrats calling Trump a fascist leads to violence. And then he called Kamala Harris a fascist. Donald Trump calls her a Marxist fascist. He doesn't know that you can't be both. You have to pick. You're either a Marxist or a fascist, but why would Donald Trump or his voters know that there's a difference? J.D. Vance has repeatedly asked, I'm uncomfortable saying what I'm about to repeat. This makes me really uncomfortable to repeat what he said. J.D. Vance is repeatedly asking during his campaign speeches, quote, why is nobody trying to Kamala Harris? I won't even say it. He asks, why is her side, why are Democrats trying to us, but our side isn't trying to them? I cannot, it's, I don't want to say that. So do you have any idea how dangerous it is on the campaign trail to claim Democrats are trying to assassinate Trump? And then to ask why Republicans aren't doing it? He's saying we're better than Democrats because we're not trying to do what they're doing, trying to do to Donald Trump. This craven recklessness, unforgivable. It's stoking the flames for yet another January 6th, possibly worse. Vance angrily shouted yesterday, quote, it's time to say to the Democrats, to everybody that's been attacking Donald Trump and censoring this man, cut it out before you get somebody killed, unquote. By its definition, this is stochastic terrorism. Blaming these two attempted assassinations on Democrats, that's stochastic terrorism. It makes J.D. Vance unfit for public office, unfit to be a father. Then, after warning Democrats to curb our speech, to watch what we say, Vance said the reason two people tried to take a shot at Donald Trump is because of censorship. I'm not making this up. J.D. Vance said, when you censor free speech, people turn to violence. So he's telling Democrats to stop criticizing Donald Trump because it's encouraging people to shoot him. Watch our speech. Oh, and by the way, censorship is why there have been two assassination attempts on Donald Trump. Boy, you really get a great education at Yale Law School, don't you? I mean, logic. This is, the connections he's making, he's working at a whole other level than we are. I have never in my life seen a candidate for vice president this negligent. It makes me long for one of Mike Pence's more tasteful, homoerotic, self-flagellating auto-da-fés from 2020 or 2016. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said yesterday about his second assassination attempt, quote, "Because of this communist rhetoric, the bullets are flying and will only get worse." Nothing screams tone down the political rhetoric more than calling Kamala Harris a communist or a fascist. This election is over. He lost. I'm going to go over some polling with you. Now, I'm going to go over some numbers later on. It's important. It could be razor thin in battleground states, but she's going to win the battleground states, and I'm going to go over this stuff. This election is over, but Donald Trump will not let it be over after November 5th. He will not accept the results. And the Supreme Court, even this Supreme Court, will not rule that ex-presidents are immune from prosecution for crimes they committed as ex-presidents. Donald Trump is so delusional right now. He's thinking ex-presidents are immune because of that July 1st ruling. So, if I were Stanley Woodward or one of Trump's other 50 lawyers, Alina Habba, if I were one of Trump's lawyers, you would be well advised to instruct your client to be extremely careful. He's going to lose this election, and someone needs to tell this maniac that anything he does and says after he loses this election, the slightest misstep, the slightest call for violence, the slightest threat to election officials that can be traced back to Donald Trump, make him criminally liable. He is delusional. He still thinks he's in the Oval Office and has some kind of immunity based on that July 1st ruling from the Supreme Court. Somebody needs to tell this lunatic that running for president, stealing an election, inciting violence as a candidate doesn't fall under official or unofficial acts of president. Because right now, Donald Trump is a private citizen. That's why this election is starting to look more and more like a honey trap, a sting operation. I'm pretty sure Jack Smith, the special counsel, is thinking, let the Supreme Court keep their fakakta immunity ruling. None of that ruling is going to apply to what Donald Trump is going to try in the lead up to November 5th and then after November 5th. Let me be clear. Ex-presidents can be tried for crimes they commit as ex-presidents. There is zero immunity, and somebody better tell Donald Trump about that. If I were Donald Trump, if I were one of his lawyers, I would seriously tell him to reconsider the plans he's already begun to implement denying the election results. He's not in the Oval Office anymore. There are signs that Kamala Harris is now seeing a post-debate bounce. I'm going to review some really positive polling, and it's important, so stay with me. And then I'm going to say something about some of my listeners who need some schooling, okay? I'm going to address the concerns from a handful of listeners who dismiss polling averages, okay? All right. Ignorant people vote for Donald Trump. Ignorant people vote for Donald Trump. It's very easy to convince ignorant people not to trust election results. Please, this is really important, and it kind of makes me angry, okay? Keep in mind, the same people who don't trust election results don't trust the polling averages. I cannot stress this enough. When you say to me, pollsters always get it wrong, when you say, I never spoke to a pollster, when you say that, I know some of you think you sound smart. I know you think you're oozing critical thinking. But it's the height of ignorance, and it's a threat to our democracy. To discount A-plus polling, ignorant, and it is a threat to democracy. Okay, please pay attention to this because it's making me really angry. Okay? I'm going to get back to that in a second. New polling averages show Kamala Harris hitting a new ceiling, and there's still room for her to grow. Meanwhile, Trump is stuck with a ceiling significantly lower than Harris's. I'll go over this later. She's going up. She's touching new highs. I talked about ceilings last week. Trump is idling with the parking brake off, slowly drifting downhill. You can look at the polling averages, okay? So let's go over ceilings again and why they tell us so much about what's about to happen. And it's not good for Donald Trump, okay? There's a different story being told than the story that was told last week before the debate. There's a new story, okay? Now let me talk about ceilings for a second. In 2020, Joe Biden's ceiling, and I'm giving you this information because I want the listeners who think pollsters always get it wrong. God, I don't know why I'm so angry about this. To all my listeners who say you can't trust the polls, okay? Please pay attention, okay? In 2020, Joe Biden's ceiling in a head-to-head matchup with Donald Trump reached 53%. He hit that ceiling in late September of 2019, just as the race for the Democratic nomination was kicking into gear. Okay? Trump's ceiling in 2020, the highest he ever got in a head-to-head matchup with Joe Biden, was 45.6%. He hit that in mid-February of 2020. Okay? Now, you want to tell me polling averages don't mean anything and the A-plus pollers don't? This is not only ignorant, I'm going to show you why it's dangerous to talk this way, okay? What does Biden's 53% ceiling versus Trump's 45.6% ceiling back in 2020 mean? It means that throughout all of 2020, the best Trump could ever hope for was 45.6% of the vote. Okay? Now keep in mind, as we get closer to the finish line, the race tightens and candidates, the trend lines show them heading towards their ceilings. For example, the night before the 2020 presidential election, Trump was 1 point shy of his ceiling. Okay? But his ceiling was only 45.6%. Biden was a little under 2 points shy of his ceiling, but his ceiling was 53%. Okay? There's almost an 8-point differential in the ceiling here. Okay? At no point, I don't know why I'm getting angry. I just can't believe how stupid some of my listeners are when they say pollsters get it wrong. At no point in the 2020 race did Donald Trump ever lead Joe Biden in the polling averages. Never. Never. There was never any sign that Trump was going to win in 2020. The closest the Biden-Trump race ever got was May of 2020, when Joe Biden was leading in the polling averages by just 4 points. That was the low for Joe Biden, a 4% lead in the polling averages, well outside the margin of error. There was never any time in 2020 when it looked like Donald Trump was going to win the popular vote. Only one poll in February, an Emerson poll, and Emerson is an A-plus poll. They temporarily showed Trump leading Biden for like a nanosecond, but that was a temporary outlier. Every other A-plus pollster, including Emerson, and I mean every A-plus pollster, and Rasmussen is not an A-plus pollster. It's not even a D-plus pollster. Every A-plus pollster showed Biden beating Trump throughout all of 2020. You cannot find one single A-plus pollster showing Trump winning in 2020 except for that one Emerson poll in, when was it, February of 2020, right? Yeah. And then they quickly changed it. So, the headline this morning is, if you compare 2020 to the past 2 months, when Kamala Harris became the presumptive and then actual nominee, we are seeing something similar to 2020. Not identical, similar. Nothing is like this, right? Joe Biden, remember, dropped out, okay? But let me show you an abridged version of the polling averages. We only have 2 months. We don't have the whole year with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup, okay? So between July 5th and August 5th, okay, this is the time when we weren't sure if Biden was going to drop out, and then by August 5th, she was the presumptive nominee. During that period, Trump consistently led Kamala Harris anywhere between 1 and 2 points, okay? But that didn't mean anything because she was carrying Joe Biden's baggage. Nobody knew who she was. On August 4th, the polling averages showed a tie. On August 5th, Harris took the lead, and she hasn't let go of it since, okay? The same way Biden never, ever let go of the lead in 2020, okay? Her lead is growing, and we're seeing Trump revert to the 46% range. Now, his ceiling is about 48%. Harris has now hit a ceiling of 50%. Today, this morning, the polling averages show her hitting, for the first time, a 50% ceiling. So it's starting to smell like 2020. Trump cannot crack 46%. He's capable of 48%. But he had that against Harris when we weren't even sure Joe Biden was going to step aside. He has been stuck at 46% since the beginning of August. In the next 47 days, that's how much, right? Okay, we have 47 days. It's a blink of an eye. We're going to see Trump not coming close to his ceiling. He's going to stay at 46%. If he gets up to 47% in the national averages, but he ain't going past 48%. That's his ceiling. I suspect Harris will touch 51%. It is conceivable, and there's no reason not to believe she's going to outperform Joe Biden in 2020 in the national polling averages. I think in the run-up to November 5th, it is conceivable that she could hit 53%, which Biden hit a couple of times in 2020. We will never see the race tied nationally again. That's an impossibility. It will get tight in the battleground states, but not nationally. Now, I'm talking about national polling averages here, the popular vote, which Trump has never won. Donald Trump has never won the popular vote. There is absolutely no way Donald Trump is going to win the popular vote in November. It is, after the debate, it is now an impossibility. Okay. As you know, I believe the blue wall is a lock. This is the worst case scenario map. It is a lock so long as she doesn't take it for granted. And again, you're looking basically at a honeypot, a sting operation. Donald Trump is not going to accept the results. And special counsel Jack Smith, he's going to be able to toss out all those other indictments because Trump is not going to react well to this defeat because he's desperate. Trump's behavior in the lead up to November 5th and after November 5th, I believe that's what's going to put him in prison. He cannot handle what's about to happen to him. And he's going to commit many crimes, many crimes. And the July 1st Supreme Court ruling about presidential immunity does not apply to crimes committed by ex-presidents when they're no longer in the Oval Office. So, we've had more than a month of Harris consistently beating Trump in the national polling averages. It's now September 18th. She's been leading him since August 5th, and she's growing. When you look at the momentum and the trajectory of her momentum, it is not inconceivable that she could touch 53% by the end of September. Okay? Trump is hanging out with Laura Loomer. When Harris starts polling in the 50s like she is now, he's going to start committing crimes on a massive scale. There's no immunity. This is inadvertently a honeypot. This whole election is a sting operation. So, what are realistic expectations? Okay, this is Biden's win from 2020. What is a realistic expectation for November 5th? Harris, now I'm going to talk about some things that nobody is going to tell you about because I've kind of figured this out by myself. And this is me strategizing if I were running her campaign. Okay, so this is what I would do if I were David Plouffe. And I think this is what they are going to do because I've gotten this right so far in terms of the strategy. Okay, what is a realistic expectation? Well, this is the map. This is Joe Biden's victory over Donald Trump. Look at the map. Get a screenshot. He gets 306 electoral votes. Trump gets 232. He gets 5 battleground states that Hillary didn't get in 2016: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. Those are 5 states that he won in 2020. It is a realistic expectation for her to recreate Joe Biden's electoral map from 2020. It's realistic and it's doable. It's likely. Okay? It's very likely. What other untold riches can be mined from that map? Okay? Well, let's go back to the worst case scenario map. This is just Harris winning the blue wall. That gets her to 270. Okay? Now, this is what I think the strategy is. This is just me trying to figure it out. But I'm right. I'm absolutely right. Where there is a Democratic Senate race, Harris, between now and late October, is less likely to put that state into play for herself because she runs the risk of jeopardizing the Democratic candidate running in that state. Not all, I'm going to go over this because I think this is really fascinating, okay? Harris, Biden, Walz are radioactive in Texas. They're radioactive in Ohio and Montana. And there are 3 important Senate races. To refresh your memory, there are 7 toss-ups in the Senate. I think there are 30 Senate races. 7 of them are toss-ups. And in order for Democrats to keep control of the Senate, they have to win all 7 toss-ups. And Montana is not looking great. Now, there's hope. I've been over this, but okay? All right. So, she's keeping Ohio, Texas, Montana out of play until the first week of November. Forget Montana, but you got John Tester, the Democrat incumbent in Montana. He's running for re-election. This is going to be a hard one, and he has to win. He doesn't want Kamala Harris stepping foot in Montana. He's pretty much said so. He won't endorse her. He didn't go to the convention. He said, I will not nationalize this race. It's between me and the people of Montana, which means he's going to win this on his own. And the same goes right now for Sherrod Brown in Ohio. He didn't go to the convention. And believe it or not, Colin Allred, Congressman Colin Allred down in Texas. Okay? As we get closer to the end of October, I do think Colin Allred will benefit from Harris and Walz going down there to campaign and trying to win Texas. More so than Ohio. I mean, if it looks like Sherrod Brown, and it does look like he's going to win, in November you might see the Democrats, Harris and Walz, make a play for Ohio. But right now, Colin Allred in Texas, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, and certainly John Tester are running entirely on their own. They're not running as Democrats. A little, Colin Allred, I'll get to Colin Allred in a second because this is kind of interesting in Texas. She's not stepping foot in Texas, Montana, Ohio till the first week of November. So here's the order. This is how I would strategize. When you have to pick off Texas, Montana, or Ohio, if you're Kamala Harris, first up is Texas, then Ohio, then Montana. Montana is, Trump won, I think he won by 20 points, either in 2016. Tester's on his own. If he wins this, he's Superman. I have been telling you for weeks that the next two states to open up for Harris will be Florida and then Iowa. There'll be a feint towards Indiana to get Trump to spend money there. And that's what you're going to see. I've been pretty accurate. Why Indiana? Because Obama won Indiana in 2008, the same way he won North Carolina in 2008. And Harris has pretty much locked in North Carolina. After she nails the blue wall, and it's looking, Pennsylvania is still tight, but she has reversed the momentum in Pennsylvania is staggering. She's reversed Biden's polling, and every week she goes up. So after she nails the blue wall, after North Carolina becomes a lock, which I think it already is, then she continues to take the fight to Georgia. She can campaign in North Carolina and Georgia with abandon because there are no Senate races she has to worry about contaminating. She can send the heavy artillery right now into North Carolina and Georgia. She can send the Bidens, the Obamas, the Clintons, Bernie, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Bruce Springsteen. This has when you look at the firepower, if you look at this as war, this has the makings of a massacre. But the firepower, the money that she has. So I suspect starting in October, she's going to nail Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and then there's Arizona, which Biden won. And let me go back to the Biden victory. Okay. There's a Senate race in Arizona, but it's different from Texas. It's different from Montana. It's different from Ohio. You got Congressman Ruben Gallego, Democrat. He's going to beat Kari Lake, partly because this race has been nationalized. There's been a lot of national focus on Arizona, not just because of Kari Lake, not just because of that Civil War era abortion ban that they had to reverse. There's been national attention towards Arizona since 2020 because Biden won it, and there were false electors sent on January 6th from Arizona. It's a contested state. That is a nationalized election. Ruben Gallego benefits from Kamala Harris campaigning down there. In Nevada, which Democrats win consistently, it's always tight, but Democrats do win. Hillary won Nevada in 2016. You got Democrat Jackie Rose in Nevada. She's running for re-election. She's going to win. She's going to benefit from Harris campaigning in Nevada, and Harris gets updraft from Jackie Rosen's popularity. Okay? This is why the next play will be Florida and Iowa. No important Senate race in Ohio that she has to worry about contaminating. I said it, we're going to focus on Iowa before Texas and Ohio. And a lot of you wrote to me and said, Iowa, what are you talking about? Obama won Iowa twice. And Trump won the caucuses in Iowa this year, but he underperformed, partly because of the weather. But he's also pissed off the evangelicals in Iowa by waffling on abortion. You cannot win Iowa if you piss off the evangelicals. And we're seeing some polling, we saw it last week, that shows Iowa tightening. I looked at that, I went, wow, it's happening. I went, this is incredible. Again, we're only talking about 6 electoral votes for Iowa. Then there's Florida, 30 electoral votes. And that's where she's taking the fight next. I've gone over it, partly because it's psyops. Trump lives in Florida. The thought of his losing Florida will drive him even crazier than he already is. He's going to divert resources so he wins Florida. If it's in play, it will be maddening for him. He knows he's going to lose New York. That's why he moved out of New York. One of the we hate him in New York, and the thought of Florida, getting to know Trump the way we got to know him in New York and hating him, he takes this personally. So she's by campaigning next in Florida, she's poking him. And you've got a Senate race there. You got Senator Rick Scott, Republican incumbent. He's starting to look vulnerable. He should be in prison. He stole $1 billion from Medicaid and Medicare. He should be in prison. But he's starting to look vulnerable. There may be a pickup in the Senate. His Democratic opponent, former Congresswoman Debbie McCarcel-Powell, almost in striking distance, she will benefit from Harris making a play for Florida. Florida is like Arizona. The race is nationalized. The voters from Florida aren't going to be turned off by saying Kamala Harris or the Bidens or Beyonce or Taylor Swift, Bernie, Doug Emhoff or his parents campaigning in Florida. The Obamas are not going to contaminate. None of those people we fell in love with at the DNC last month, they're just going to help Powell in the Senate and Kamala. This is about allocation of resources. And mark my words, you're going to be hearing Florida, Florida, Florida as we close in on October. You won't be hearing about Ohio, not Texas, Florida. And then you're going to be hearing about Iowa throughout October. And there'll be a feint towards Indiana because Obama won it in 2008. Okay, let's turn to, I love this stuff. And I'm going to make a larger point. If I were running the campaign, if I were running the Democratic Party, this is how I would allocate the resources. Climate change, income inequality, abortion, LGBTQ rights. I mean, this is how you solve it. I know I sound like it's a game, but this is the only way to solve all these issues. Taking control of the Oval Office, the House of Representatives, the Senate, with a landslide. And it has to be gamed out. That's the way it works. Okay, let's turn to Texas, which they used to call the Big Enchilada. Some of you are old enough to remember when they called Texas the Big Enchilada. I think it was when George W. Bush was running back in 2000. You got 40 electoral votes in Texas. That's the second highest number of electoral votes, right behind California, which is 54. Florida has 30, and New York has 28. New York used to have a larger population. You would think with Ron DeSantis and his COVID policy, Florida's population would be much smaller. So, as Harris's momentum continues, she will bring the fight to Texas. But it's going to be the first week of November. In Texas, you have Democratic Congressman Colin Allred running for the odious Republican Ted Cruz's seat. Believe it or not, right now, the last thing Colin Allred needs is Kamala Harris or Coach Walz nationalizing this race. I know it seems counterintuitive. You're not going to see Kamala or Coach Walz anywhere near Texas until the end of October. At least that's my advice. Colin Allred is running a completely different campaign than Beto O'Rourke ran against Ted Cruz back in 2018. You might remember Beto ran a flashy campaign, very liberal, and to his credit, it worked. I mean, the race was, what was it? It was close. Beto lost by 220,000 votes, about that. The feeling in the Allred camp, Congressman Allred camp, is let's not make this race about anything other than Ted Cruz. And let's compare biographies. And that's what they're saying. It's a race about character, not about issues, which is, unfortunately, the only way Colin Allred is going to be able to win in Texas. Colin Allred, an amazing biography, NFL player, becomes a civil rights attorney, then a progressive congressman, and he's black. He'd be well advised, and I think he's doing this, to keep it light on issues, especially immigration, guns, and abortion. Allred, right now, I'm being told, is trying to fly. It's counterintuitive. He wants to fly under the radar. And he wants to keep it negative. Keep this race about Ted Cruz, who is the most detested senator in Washington, D.C. Nobody hates Ted Cruz. If you polled the Senate, who do you hate more than anybody else? I'm not making this up. It's Ted Cruz. Despised. Liz Cheney is down in Texas campaigning for Colin Allred. She's a Republican. He, I believe, is going to benefit from silent Republicans who have announced or thinking about voting for Kamala Harris. January 6th, as Donald Trump becomes more menacing as we head towards November 5th, January 6th is going to come back into focus, especially in Texas, because Ted Cruz is complicit. Ted Cruz was objecting to the certification of the election with Paul Gosar from Arizona, just as Donald Trump's thugs broke in to the Capitol and they all had to be evacuated. I'm guessing, besides Liz Cheney, there are a lot of silent Texas Republicans loyal to George W. Bush who want to take out Cruz for many reasons, including January 6th. And if Harris and Walz come down to Texas now, Colin Allred will suffer from guilt by association. And it will undermine all the work Liz Cheney and the silent Republicans in Texas are already doing down there for Colin Allred, and on the down low for Kamala Harris. Now, we're not seeing any polling that suggests Kamala Harris is in striking distance. We're seeing some polling that suggests Colin Allred might be within reach of Ted Cruz. She doesn't need to win Texas. She needs Colin Allred to flip Cruz's seat blue. Now, if Colin Allred can put Texas into the toss-up category, and that's a long shot, but if he can do that, if he can make the race between Ted Cruz and him a toss-up, I see Kamala Harris and the heavy artillery, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, the Bidens, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Cheneys, doing a last-minute swing through Texas in the final days of the election, like November 1st, November 2nd, November 3rd. And maybe George W. Bush, the war criminal, will step up. Maybe. Then she puts Ohio in play on November 3rd or 4th. Sherrod Brown, the Democratic incumbent from Ohio, is leading Bernie Moreno, partly because Brown is staying away from Kamala Harris. Moreno is an incredibly weak candidate. Plus, the junior senator from Ohio is J.D. Vance. Did I mention he is a horrible human being? And Ohio voters elected him in 2022. They have, some of them, a lot of them have buyer's remorse. When you look at what he's done to Springfield, Ohio, what he's cost them, 33, 34 police officers, state troopers having to be sent down there to protect the schools because J.D. Vance is lying about Haitian immigrants. They have buyer's remorse for this monster. I think J.D. Vance, now this is a long shot. Oh, I put Ohio in the same category as Indiana. Harris has a better chance of winning Ohio than she does Montana. I mean, Ohio's out of the question, but a lot of things are out of the question until they're not. I don't think Kamala Harris needs to go to Ohio. I think J.D. Vance can win Ohio for Harris all by himself. Things can happen very quickly. We have a lot of horrible people who live in this country, but Trump and Harris, not Harris, Trump and Vance, Trump and Vance are beyond the pale. Even horrible people right now are going, ooh, maybe I'm going to stay home on Election Day. What Harris has done in 2 months, really 1 month, the way she has made up the lost ground from Joe Biden's doldrums and then taking the lead, I mean, we're seeing her going up 10 points in some swing states. Taking Biden and going up 10 points in a month. Again, she doesn't need to win Indiana. She needs to make Trump spend money there. And it's why the fundraising gap will hurt Trump. There's a massive fundraising gap right now. The fundraising gap, there's a virtuous cycle to a fundraising gap. Every time Kamala Harris opens up a new state outside the blue wall, Trump has to spend money in that state. He has to spend money he doesn't have. It dilutes his strength. It makes him weaker, which in turn opens up new states. This is why it's called a virtuous cycle. If you have more money, you can go play in Indiana. You can play in Texas eventually, Iowa. And that weakens Trump. And that means other states will fall into line for Kamala Harris, possibly. All right, I wanted to keep this show short. Let's go over the polling as of this morning, and then I want to tell you why some of my listeners are getting it wrong about polling. This is where it stands as of this morning, and it's nothing but good news. It's not incredible. It's good, steady, and solid news. You might remember I said we didn't see a significant post-convention bounce. Remember I said that? And then I said that's because the cycle of the calendar is completely different. You might remember I first said don't expect a debate bounce for Kamala Harris because traditionally debates don't move the needle. Why? Because traditionally by the time debates take place, most Americans have already made up their minds. And I talked about even the debate between Biden and Trump. Biden picked up more independents after that debate, even though he clearly lost it. I said, don't expect the needle to move after the debate. And then the weekend before the debate between Harris and Trump, I said, I think this debate is a lot more important than I thought. I said it might move the needle because this is a completely different election calendar. And polls I looked at said something like 30% of Americans were watching the debate because they needed more information about Kamala Harris. Believe it or not, a large number of voters still have no idea who she is. You might remember the night before the debate, I said there was much more riding on it than any presidential debate in recent memory because she is still a mystery to a lot of voters. And of course, Trump needed the debate to flip the script, to change the narrative. He didn't. It is looking, if you're looking at the national polling averages, it's becoming increasingly obvious 1 week after that debate, the needle moved significantly. And Americans got to know Kamala Harris. They liked what they saw. Trump, in the past week not only lost ground, but she gained ground. That's one of the things this is different, right? Trump, sometimes with Biden, Trump would go down and Biden would be in the lead, but Biden wasn't going up, right? Kamala Harris is hitting a new ceiling, and it's incredible. I told you earlier, she's now at 50%. 50% of Americans nationwide say they are voting for Kamala Harris. That's the polling averages of A-plus polls. 46% say they're voting for Trump. As of this morning, Harris has not just opened up a 4-point lead in the polling averages, she hit a new ceiling, 50%. Now, Trump's ceiling technically is 48%, but he hit that before Harris, in a one-on-one matchup between Harris and Trump, his ceiling is 48%, but he got that before Joe Biden stepped aside. It was a hypothetical matchup. The highest he ever got against her is 48%. That was back late mid-July. Ancient history. Since then, we have witnessed a steady erosion where Trump is now down to 46%. And he can't crack 46%. Harris took the lead back on August 6. Slow and steady, she climbed from 47% on August 6 when she first took the lead all the way up to 50%, outside the margin of error. And except for one day back in early August when Trump's ceiling hit 48, I think it was July, he's been hovering at around 46, 47%, and he's stuck at 46%. This means, let's say Donald Trump does everything right between now and Election Day. The best he can hope for is 48%. That's assuming no more trips to Arlington, no more debates. Harris, if she does everything right, and she will, right now the best she can hope for is 50%. But we don't know what her ceiling is yet. Joe Biden hit 53%. Again, this is the popular vote. You have to win the battleground states. But when we see a 4% differential or more in the popular vote, it tells us two things. The battleground states will fall in her favor, and Democrats are going to take back the House. So, here's another reason these numbers are so important. And spare me your complaints about going over these polls, because there is nothing more important than these numbers. Donald Trump is already challenging the election, okay? And to my listeners who want to complain about my going over these polls, do me the service now of listening to me, please. Polling averages in the lead up to any election serve as part of the certification process, not just here in America, but throughout the world. Think about Venezuela, okay? Election fraud is proven overseas when one candidate wins an election despite overwhelming evidence in the polling averages showing that the winner was going to lose, right? We see that all the time in authoritarian elections where one guy wins, but the polling averages say he was going to lose. That's one of the primary ways to prove election fraud. So it makes me angry that there's a small contingent of listeners who keep saying, don't go over the polls. They insist polls get it wrong. They don't. More importantly, polls are a safeguard, reliable polls, not Rasmussen. I'm talking about A-plus polls. Polling averages are what guarantee election integrity. Around the world and here in America, where Donald Trump is going to convince nearly half this country, once again, that the election was stolen from him. Donald Trump is already spreading lies, trying to steal this election. Of course, this time he's going to go to prison for it, but that's a whole other thing. He's got practically all his voters convinced that our government cannot count votes, that there's fraud. And you know what else he's got his idiot voters convinced of? The pollsters, the polling averages can't be trusted. Because I went over this earlier, 2020, there was never a poll showing Joe Biden losing to Donald Trump. So when you say that to a MAGA Republican, they go, well, of course, you can't trust the polls. You can't trust the pollsters. You can't trust the exit polls. So look, I understand a healthy mistrust, a healthy distrust of all institutions. But polling averages of A-plus polling units are an accurate snapshot of where elections stand as of this moment. And you need polling averages, you need exit polls. You need exit polls you need these polls in the lead up to election day and on election day to prove the election was or wasn't stolen. Okay? And this is why I don't mean it's just pure ignorance to say, well, I never get a call from a pollster. They always get it wrong. Where did you learn this from? Where did you get this idea that pollsters get it wrong? In 2020, the polling averages on election day, okay, showed Arizona razor thin, but Biden winning by a couple of, like 2 or 3 tenths of a percentage point. In fact, I'll get it for you in a second. 0.2 of a percentage point. If you go back and look at, if you go back and look at the polling averages, A-plus polls said Biden would beat Donald Trump by 0.2 of a percentage point. Look at this. This is Georgia. Joe Biden gets 49.51%. Donald Trump gets 49.25%. What is the differential there? What is that? 0.2 of a percentage point? I can't do the math. I mean, that's incredible how accurate they got it. Okay? Polling averages showed Biden winning Nevada. As for the blue wall in 2020, the polling averages the night before the election showed Biden winning Pennsylvania, Biden winning Wisconsin, and Biden winning Michigan, and Biden won the blue wall. So when you write to me to complain and say the polls don't mean anything, ignorance and carelessness. It's not good for our democracy to challenge the integrity of both our elections and our polling averages. You're enabling the stolen election narrative when you discount the polls. You become part of the problem. When Trump says the election was stolen in the blue wall and the vote count can't be trusted, part of the argument before the judges is, look at the polling averages. Rudy Giuliani lost 60 cases challenging the 2020 election results. He went before 60 judges challenging the results in all the battleground states. What do you think the judges looked at? The polling averages. Well, all the polling averages, all the exit polls showed your client was going to lose. Case dismissed. Trump is going to lose. He's not going to accept the results. He's going to go even more insane. This time, he's going to commit more crimes, but this time, he doesn't have any immunity. He will be going to prison. They're going to get him this time. This election is a honeypot. They're going to get him. That's my prediction, that he's about to commit crimes for which he has zero immunity. All right. Sorry it went so long. Sorry I got a little perturbed with some of my listeners. I read all your comments. I read everything you send to me through my website. I'm a human being. Sometimes I get a little frustrated. Thank God I have this show to vent. I didn't mean to call some of my listeners ignorant. But it is ignorant and irresponsible to question the polling. I think I laid out a pretty convincing case of how accurate the polling averages are. I have some corrections. On Monday's show, I misspoke. I was a little tired. I made some mistakes on Monday's show. I misspoke when I described the suspect in Sunday's assassination attempt. I said he supported a Republican dream ticket of Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy in 2020. I should have said he supported that dream ticket in 2024. I got that wrong. Also, I was talking about boycotts, and I misspoke when I said Coca-Cola and Delta are headquartered in Florida. They are headquartered in Georgia, and it's one of those things. I do this show live, and what makes this terrifying is you think you're saying one thing and something else comes out your lips. I thought I was saying Georgia. I said Florida. So I got that wrong. Also, Congress, the new House of Representatives, will be seated before January 6th. I misspoke, and actually I forgot. I made a mistake. I said that because he's Speaker, Mike Johnson will not certify the election on January 6th. I misspoke, and I got it wrong. I forgot that the new House of Representatives, the new Congress, is seated, I think it's January 3rd. Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House. God forbid Mike Johnson is Speaker again. Read Liz Cheney's book. This guy, well, I don't want to get into it. Thank you. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong. Is anybody still here? I know I go off on, I've got a lot of anger issues. If I didn't do this show, I would walk around New York City just with my fists bandaged from just punching walls, punching brick walls, or Jake LaMotta at the end of Raging Bull, just banging my head. Why? Hey, if you enjoyed any of this, not sure you did. This election is changing very quickly, and I get things wrong. I also get a lot of things right, and you'll see. If you liked any of this, please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. Share this episode. It's the best way, the only way to help me is by sharing this. There's nothing else more important than sharing these episodes, forwarding them to your friends. It's the only reason I have any audience. It's because of my audience. There's nobody. I got Robert Smigel and Sam Cedar. That's it. So I'm stuck with my listeners. Stuck with you guys. I'm effed. Got to depend on my listeners. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com and buy garbage over there that you don't need. Worthless garbage. Come on, some of you are dumb enough to buy this crap. What do you got? The Still a Democrat t-shirt. The MAGA hats. There's the MAGA hat for your MAGA buddy. And on the back it says low IQ individual. You won't be able to read that. Get that for your MAGA friend. Or MAGA for Kamala. I would wear that if I were going to a Trump rally, as long as I had my fart filtration mask. MAGA moron, I actually think you could buy the MAGA moron cap for a MAGA moron, and they would proudly wear it. This is the souvenir for the 2024 election. It's the worst case scenario map. By the way, I cannot wait till November 6th when I no longer have to look at this effing map. But I made this for my sister. Now it's a coffee mug. It shows why it's impossible for Kamala Harris to lose. Okay? Donald Trump has how he sees himself. Genghis Khan, C-O-N. I like this. How many credible sexual assault accusations against Donald Trump? This was him as a predator. This is great. It's Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. It's fantastic. It's on both sides. It's just great. It's just great. Here's another gift for your idiot Trump supporters. It's Comrade Trump. It says Trump 2028. Is anybody still here? My nephew Leonard, took my credit card. He bought 500 David Ferdman Show hoodies, 500 David Ferdman Show coffee mugs, 500 David Ferdman Show t-shirts. Help a brother out. The kid can't spell. And the Still a Democrat t-shirt. If you're going to what is that? Made in Los Estados Unidos, that cut. Is anybody still here? And if you're going to any Trump rallies, make sure you pick up the official Trump fart filtration mask. Don't be fooled by imitators. This is the fart filtration mask the pros wear. This is what they wear. If you work for Donald Trump, you wear the official Trump fart filtration mask. Do not let your lungs get scorched by a Donald Trump blowout. And if you want to hurt my feelings, pick up the chef's apron with the words, "Hope you're in the mood for diarrhea." God, am I boring. Is anybody still here? And let's just look at this pig again. This is what J.D. Vance sees when he looks in the mirror. I know this for a fact. Body dysmorphia. This is what J.D. Vance sees. He is the absolute worst. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. I should wrap this up. 2 hours. God. These shows should be an hour. These shows should be an hour. Debate Watch Party, October 1st. We're going to do it again. We're going to watch this monster go up again. It's going to be literally the closest thing to good versus evil. Coach Walsh, who I'm in love with, and J.D. Vance. Good, truly good versus evil. October 1st, we're going to do a Debate Watch Party. All right. Thank you, everybody, for putting up with my nonsense. I don't know. This was kind of goodbye. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Bye-bye.